Hi everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to assemble a flat-packed vivarium. Most pet shops that sell reptile vivariums will offer them either flat-packed or ready assembled. I chose to take mine flat-packed for two reasons. Firstly, so I can show you how to assemble one if you need to, and secondly because I was buying 3 4x2x2 vivs and one 4x1.5x1.5, and there's no way I was going to be able to carry all those up the stairs already assembled. Make sure if you're lifting a vivarium, even if it is flat packed, that you use 2 people if possible, because they are extraordinarily heavy and sometimes very nearly impossible to move. It took us a good 10 minutes to get this up the stairs between myself and my mother because they are heavy. These vivariums are going directly beside my bed, and unfortunately my bedroom is the box room in the house, so it's very, very small. So I have very little room to work with, which is why I'm doing a lot of crab walking side to side. Right behind the camera here is my bed, and there's very little room. The first thing you should do after unboxing the Viv is count the individual pieces and make sure nothing was accidentally left out. Inside the box with most brands, you should find a set of instructions. This is usually just a single A4 sheet. I don't remember what A4 is called in America. Printing sheet? Printer sheet? For non-Americans, did you know Americans don't use A4, A1, A2, etc.? It's interesting. Anyway, a sheet of paper with the instructions on it, and in the instructions it'll say to you how many pieces there should be and what they're labelled. You can see on these pieces they've actually got little stickers on them that says their number and what side they're from, whether they're the top or the bottom, etc. That there's my sheet of instructions, and this covered in the bubble wrap is the glass, so we're going to put that to one side entirely so I don't accidentally walk into it and break it. Make sure when you're first doing this that you actually have enough room on the floor for where the Viv is going to be lying down. So this is a 4 foot by 2 foot on the base, so I made sure to have 5 foot by 3 foot at least so that I could work around it and I could make sure that everything fits in place without me being sandwiched against the wall. When you're sure you have all the wooden pieces, which should be the top, the bottom, the back, the left side, the right side, and then the bottom front lip and the top front lip, and then the glass, once that's all done, you can take away any pieces of rubbish or scrap, put it to one side so it's out of the way, and then you can sit down and properly read your instructions. Make sure when you're reading your instructions to see if it tells you if you need any specific tools like a drill or a screwdriver or Allen keys and such like that, because you do not want to be in the middle of a build holding something in place, yelling for someone else to bring you a screwdriver because you forgot to go grab it and you can't let go of the thing you're holding, and I swear this isn't personal experience at all. Read the instructions to see how many of each screw or bolt you should have, and then make sure to count them out, because sometimes a manufacturer, if it's a machine or if it's a person, they can make a mistake and they can miss out on 1 or 2, or they might give you 1 or 2 extra. And you don't want to be sitting there at the end wondering if you dropped one when you never had it in the first place, and you also don't want to be sitting there at the end when, yeah, I dropped that. You don't want to be sitting there at the end with an extra bolt going, well, what did I miss? When really it was an extra one all along. If pieces are missing, repackage it, give it back to the person you got it from, and either get your money back or get a replacement, because that's not what you paid for. The thing I very briefly held up at the end of this was the Allen key that actually came with it, so I didn't need to have my own, but I accidentally held it off the screen. Once you have your instructions fully read, you can move all the pieces you won't need until the end out of the way, and lay out the first piece. So for this Viv, it said to start with the base and the left side. So I'm moving all the other pieces out of the way so they're not in my way and I'm not going to end up accidentally damaging them or knocking them on top of myself. And I'm just taking the bottom, and there's a little sticker on it that says this is the front of the bottom, and I'm taking the left side. Take the bottom and face it away from yourself. So that sticker is meant to be at the front when you're looking into it when it's already assembled. So you're going to face that away from yourself on the upside so that all of the pre-drilled holes are ready to go. Now, of course, I put it on backwards where the sticker was at the back by accident, so I had to turn it over, but by the 4th Viv, I swear I had it down. When that's in place, you can take the left side and put it with the rails facing out. So that's the rails that are going to be holding the edge of the glass when the door is shut, and you face that towards the inside of the Viv, but to your left. For this Viv, the instructions were to put 2 of the long silver bolts up underneath. There was a hole on each corner on the left from underneath the Viv that went directly into the left panel. I realised afterwards that you actually couldn't see any of the left panels, so I'm going to do the right panel in detail. These are called dowels. We're using mainly dowels to attach the wooden plinths, and the plinth is basically the bottom lip and the top lip at the front of the Viv that holds the glass. So this is the bottom plinth, and we're going to be putting the dowels partially into the holes that are present, but only halfway. We then insert the half stuck out dowels into the holes that are on the other side of the Viv in the left panel. When trying to tap things into place on a Viv, never use a hammer or use a hammer covered in cloth. You should be super gentle about it because you don't want to crack the frame or the coating that's on the wood, because then your Viv will no longer be waterproof and you're screwed. The end with no dowels I've just propped up on the right side because that's the height it's going to be at while I get the top one ready. So these are the holes here that you can see the dowels are going into, and you put them halfway in without pushing them all the way because then you'll lose the dowel. Make sure that you put the plinths in before you put in the right side, because otherwise you won't be able to bend it out far enough to fit them and the dowels in. So you've got to put the dowels with the plinths into the left side, then you plug them into the right side, and then you can screw the right side into the base. So just for the sake of convenience, put the dowels in both sides of the plinth, plug the left one in, and just leave the right side resting on top of the right side, and that way you can just pull out the right side to plug both of them in and you're good to go. So this is the part where I realised you couldn't see anything. The right hand side to put the screws in, it's literally just with the Allen key. You can turn it really easily, and then at the end you just turn it bit by bit, making sure that you're not tightening it so much that you crack the coating on the wood. There's a bolt at the top right corner here and also the one at the back. Next there's a bolt in the middle at the front, and this holds the plinth in place so that the glass isn't shaken back and forth. It just makes it a little bit more stable. So definitely don't forget this one. I did forget it at one point and had to go back and redo it. Once you have that part in, you've basically finished the entire front part. So you've got your base, your left side, your right side, and both plinths. So now you can move on to the top. I personally find it easiest to put the top on upside down because it's big enough obviously to hold the top, it's made for it, and then you can put in all of the necessary plugs and bolts, etc., so it'll fit into the sides. These were an absolute mystery to me. I had no idea what they were, I didn't know how they worked, and the instructions were very unclear. It just said insert, and I had no idea how. But I figured it out after a while. You need a screwdriver, and what you need to do is the part that's all twisty like this, you put that down and screw it in by hand just lightly so it's in place and lined up, and then you use your screwdriver to screw it in the rest of the way as far as the thread goes. So the thread is the part that looks like a screw, it's just the twisty bit going around the edge of the metal. And then obviously, as you can see either side, we had a dowel either side of this bolt nut screw thing. So there's one of these in each corner, and then there was one at the front for just stability. When you have all of the pieces in place, it should look something like this. So each of them has got one of those weird screw bolt things in the middle and a dowel on either side of them. Turn the roof over and you'll see the holes that were on top of the sides. You can just line it up and tap it into place. Use either the flat of your hand or the heel of your hand to do it. It doesn't need that much force, but never use anything really heavy like a hammer or like I once did a kettlebell, because it will break. Inside the Viv where these were put in the top, you'll see them sticking down. And you use these weird circle things, which I'd also never seen before. I do not know what they're called. You put them up U-shaped, and they've got a screw shape on the front. It's a Phillips head screwdriver shape. So you put in the screwdriver and you turn it clockwise about 180 degrees, and it will lock in place to make sure that it is steady and secure. Once again, I'd never actually come across one of these before because I've never built a Viv this size before, or maybe I'm just a cheapskate and I've only had cheap Vivs before this, but I think these are great because it made it really solid and it made the roof, like the seam between the roof and the side, nearly non-existent. So it was really, really useful, and I think they're great. So with that in place, you basically have your roof, your bottom, your left side, your right side, both plinths, and you're ready to put in your electrics. The electrics go in before the back so you can put the wires out the back. So for my heat source, I'm going to be using a Pro Ceramic lamp holder and bracket from Arcadia, and I'm going to be using it. It's got an E27 fitting in it, and I'm going to be putting a deep heat projector into this. I am using a 3mm drill bit to put holes into the roof of where the screws are going to be put that will be holding the fitting to the roof. Very first thing to do is make sure that you put your lamp somewhere that it's going to be used properly, so roughly halfway on one side of the Viv, and make sure that your cable is sticking out on what is going to be the back of the Viv. I couldn't record it because I only have one hand, but you basically put the drill bit in through the holes of the ceramic fitting and you drill just a tiny bit of a hole, and then you can take your screw and you can put it through the ceramic fitting and use a screwdriver to then screw that into the pre-drilled hole. So I use the screwdriver to just twist in the screw a bit by a bit so that I don't have one side completely flat and realise the other side is crooked. I put the far side in about halfway, and then I put this one about halfway, and I went back and forth to make sure it was even and mostly flat. When all the screws are in, they should sit completely flat against the roof, and they should look something along the lines of this. I then got a heat lamp cage I'm going to be fitting over the ceramic fitting so that I can make sure that my snakes, because there's going to be snakes in these Vivs, don't go up and stick themselves to the deep heat projector and burn themselves. Make sure it comes with screws because the ceramic fitting didn't, and yeah, it's a pain. So on one side you're going to have a little nook like this. That is to hold the cable so that you're not pinching the cable between the cage. So turn it so it fits the cable through it and then flatten it against the roof. The exact same as the ceramic fitting, you put little holes using the drill bit and then you screw in the screws by hand. Make sure it's fairly solid, and the reason I really like this one is because the bottom hooks on and off so I can change the bulb if it ever blows. When filming, I was going to be using these light units. Don't do it. I bought 5 light units and only 2 of them work. So I now have to go and spend money on new lights, and after fitting these ones, I realised that I'm going to have to take apart my current Vivs so that I can refit them. For those of you who do use fittings along these lines, you're going to notice that this one in particular holds 2 bulbs at a time. The bulb pieces are labelled A, B and B, so obviously the 2 A's have to go on one bulb either side and the 2 B's go on either side of another bulb. Lay them in the sides you want and then get ready to put on the back and make sure you don't pinch the cables. So here on the back you can see the 2 little nooks at the top where the cable is going to fit into so it's not pinched. So this is going on the inside of the top lip, it's not going over it, so they're not going to be pinched in the slightest, and there's enough room for you to pull them through to change the length of them when they're inside the Viv. Make sure the vents like these are facing inwards like this, so that from this side if I shove it, it'll pop out on the inside, whereas on the inside you don't want a snake to be able to shove it to the outside and escape. Push the back into place, and on one side you'll have one cable from the light, on the other side you'll have the second cable for the light and also the cable for the heat projector. Try and line up the side as best as you can before you put in the bolts that are going to be securing it. There's also one bolt that's underneath at the back that goes into the back panel, and then the 4 corners, and when they're in you can turn it the right way up and your Viv is properly made. The very last thing you need to do at this point is just putting in your glass. If you've never put glass in before, it's very simple as long as you know how it works. So these are the rails, and the top rail is far deeper than the bottom rail. So that means that you can take your piece of glass, you hold it flat against it, and you put it up into the top rail and then slide it down into the bottom rail so it'll sit comfortably. Never ever put in glass the way I'm putting in the glass here with one hand because it's stupid and risky and you might break your glass, but I was desperately trying to get on video how to do it while I only had one hand. So if anyone has suggestions for a nice tripod that fits a phone, I would love to hear it. So you slide it up into the top rail, and once it reaches the bottom rail you can push it inwards and let it slide back down into the bottom rail. And that's it, fully in, and it'll slide back and forth for you. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment them below and I'll do my absolute best to help. This is going to be the first video in a mini series per se that I'm going to be doing. So I'm just going to be doing a couple of videos showing me setting up a bioactive Viv and detailing how to properly do that. So I'll be talking about waterproofing and drainage layers and substrates and plants and all that sort of stuff, and I'll just be doing it as I'm going along actually building these. So hopefully you guys enjoy, and thank you very much.